Well, I met Lauren in 2010, about 3 months before I was due to be married. My father-in-law introduced him to me, thought it would be good for he and I to have a discussion, I suppose. And I knew right away I was meeting with someone who was different. The first thing I noticed about Lauren was that he asked questions. And he asked questions that were deep, that were personal. He asked questions like he already knew who I was, even though we'd just met. And I thought that was really interesting. It was actually sort of intimidating at the same time. But what he gave me that day in regards to preparing for my wedding and preparing to be married was invaluable. And it's interesting, we had this discussion, I thought about what he said to me for a long time, but we really didn't start meeting regularly until about a year later. We ran into each other at a men's Bible study, and he asked if I'd be interested in spending some time with him back at his home in his study. And I thought, that's interesting. He's inviting me over to his house. So much of what I'd learned and experienced throughout life was, hey, let's meet here in this public place. Let's meet in this coffee shop. And so the thought of going to someone's home was exciting, but a little intimidating as well. So I remember the first time I went to his home, and what a beautiful setting it was. It's got this wooded field, there's a river flowing through it, and the house is set up so you can see over everything, and his study looks out over the grounds, and it's a really beautiful place. It's so calming. And again, being in his home for the first time, I felt warmth. I felt loved. I felt accepted. It was the kind of home that I wanted to continue to come back to, and that's exactly what I did. We started meeting weekly in his home in the summer of 2011, and it really hasn't stopped for about 7 years. So when Lauren and I started meeting regularly, it was because I was in the midst of a crisis, which I think is sometimes the way Lauren meets a lot of people. But for me, it was a crisis of identity. I had become a Christian in 2007. I was 19 years old, and very quickly I started engaging in evangelism and ministry to people, all the way to the point where now, in 2011, I'm in full-time ministry. And everything was happening so fast, and the thing that was most important to me was how successful I was. And I remember coming to his home and asking him questions and talking about my coworkers and how frustrated I was because I felt like everyone was holding me back from what God had in store for me or what he wanted to accomplish through me. And I remember Lauren listening. He listened the whole time, and he had this really kind of loving smile on his face as he listened to me. And at the end of me talking, he looked at me and lovingly asked me, "Okay, Cam, I heard you. So what?" And that question pierced me. It changed the way I looked at who I was as a Christian, who I was as a minister, who I was as a man. I think what was so amazing about those two words was that it forced me to ask the question in myself. Why was it so important for me to be successful? Why was it so important for me to be in first place? And I couldn't give an answer that I was satisfied with. When I reckoned that, finally I looked at him and said, "Well, so what do I do?" And he said, "Cam, I think your purpose is to serve other people, is to help them flourish, and not to worry so much about if it's happening for you." Those words changed my life, and they changed how I acted towards people. They changed the kind of impact I started to make on people. It changed the way that I did ministry and built relationships. It even really changed fundamentally my marriage and relationships with family members. So, pretty incredible. One key way that Lauren's faith impacted me was via his availability. I've never seen someone who had so much time for people. Sometimes I wonder where it comes from, quite honestly, but he always seemed to make time for me. And I knew he was doing it for other people too, but he always made time for me. And that availability is what I've come to cherish so much. And I think his home plays into that too. He has this space where you are always welcome. And you can bring anything that you have, any struggle, any issue, any celebration. There's always a place to meet and to share that together. One key way that Lauren has so impacted and loved my family happened in the summer of 2017. I received a phone call from my wife. She was at the doctor. We were pregnant with our third child, and it's the phone call you hope you never get, which is that our child had died. And my wife was sobbing, and I started sobbing, and I did not know what to do. Everything seemed to be moving too fast, and I was literally like in shock. We have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and we helped them get to some family, and I went to be with Lindy. And the only thing I could think of was, we need to go to Lauren's house right now. We need to meet with him and we need to pray. Because that was the only place I could think to get when my world had collapsed. And of course, it was available, and he was available. And he made himself available to pray with Lindy and myself at the hardest possible moment that we'd ever experienced together. I'll never forget that, because where else could we have gone? That's not the kind of experience that you can process out in public. It's the kind of time when you need loving people and a welcoming place to be able to receive you and to be able to see what God has for you in that moment when you don't think there's any way forward. The uniqueness of Lauren's ministry to me is this. Lauren cares so much more about who is in front of him than what he gets to do. Who is in front of him influences what he does every time. And that is something I haven't seen in a lot of people. Most people are concerned about, what am I doing for somebody, right? A therapist might say, I'm a therapist and I'm a moment, provide therapy for people. Or a pastor might say, I provide teaching for people. But Lauren doesn't think of himself that way. He doesn't think of himself in, what am I providing for someone? He sees who's in front of him, and he asks the question, what's the best thing I could offer to this person right now, in this moment? And the way that Lauren lives in the moment with people makes what he does very unique, hard to describe, but extremely powerful. Because that's the kind of friend that everybody wants, is the friend that's going to say, what can I do for you right now? And they don't care what it is, as long as you're going to feel loved and you're going to feel empowered and to feel healed. And it's really remarkable. Within a year of spending time with Lauren, I realized that I wanted to start doing and living the same way that he was living. I wanted to start meeting with people. I wanted to make what people's needs were in the moment my top priority as a minister. I wanted to say, it's not as important about what I do. It's about who is in front of me and how can I love them right now. And that way has influenced me so much. I used to care about, hey, what's the biggest party I can throw, and how many people are going to hear this message, or how far is it going to reach on this website that I build, or something like that. But it was really in 2015 where at Oakland University I took the principles that I learned from Lauren and formed a new ministry that was all about mentoring, individual discipleship, and really just being available to students who were following Christ, to be able to empower them for whatever the Holy Spirit was leading them to do. The ministry is called Cultivate. It's been around for a few years now, and we've watched 20, 30, 40 students come through and be impacted, go on to start their own ministries with the same kind of philosophy, with the same kind of heart that I learned from Lauren about making the who the priority as opposed to the what. I don't think that my time with Lauren would have been nearly as rich, if not for meeting in his home together. And I say that because, yes, discipleship, mentoring, guidance, these kinds of things that he has provided to me, do they require a place to do it? No, they don't. You can do it anywhere, really. Like, that takes two people. But what I noticed was that Lauren was able to impart to me far more because we had this place, this quiet place to meet where we wouldn't be interrupted, where we were constantly inspired by God's creation, where it was safe. The quality of what he gave me and what he continues to give me and to so many others is directly related to the fact that everybody can meet in this safe, private, quiet place to do so. It affects the quality, right? Maybe it's not necessary, but the quality increases so much as a result of having, again, this kind of space to have these friendships, to have these conversations, to learn together and share from the heart, be open, be honest. I don't know what it would have been like if Lauren and I just met at Panera or we met at Starbucks, or even if we met in someone's office, maybe if he had an office somewhere. I just know that being invited into someone's home, being invited into a place that is so intimate, so safe, so loving, dramatically influenced the kind of conversations that we were able to have and that he has with so many people.